I don't feel like it's proper for me to ask other people to be quiet because I'm not really capable of that. So I just don't feel like it's.
No, I'm okay with it. Yeah, if we could be quiet now.
The loudest background person is Devin, so you're fine.
That's why he was like, "Do you want to ask them to be quiet?" I was like, "I don't feel like it should come from me." Hey everyone, I'm Devin, your friendly neighborhood board gamer, and this is Devin Talks Tabletop, the YouTube channel where the games are made up. What I say doesn't matter, and I am thankfully in the studio with Steamforged Games. A distinct pleasure. I appreciate you guys letting me be here. We've had the opportunity to demo Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and I just thought it would be nice to sit down and have a little chat.
Sure.
Yeah. And
let's do it.
Thanks for joining me.
Sure.
We can get started. So the first question I had is, why Monster Hunter World? This is your umpteenth intellectual property that you've translated to board games. What was special about this IP that you wanted to bring out?
One of the things that we really love doing is coming up with boss battlers is definitely a jam that we really enjoy. And one of the key things that we look for when we are looking for brands to work with, to take from video game to tabletop, is how well will it translate. And there's a couple of key things that we look for in the IP itself, but also almost as importantly within the team. And we have a number of super fans of Monster Hunter within the team, so it gives us a huge amount of confidence that we can actually do this IP a massive service because we're able to work on this with people who know it intimately.
You're at the final stage of fulfillment right now for Monster Hunter World to all of the backers of the original campaign, and I was curious, respectively, for each of you, what are the highlights for you both as to like what you accomplished in the first go around?
I think the campaign as a whole, is quite a huge campaign. I think anytime you have a large campaign like that, there's a lot of risks about delivery and expectations for the audience of what to deliver. And I think we've handled that incredibly well as a team. And we've really worked hard to maintain that updates, constant updates to the backers, and make sure they're really informed on that journey. So we've been pretty proud of the reactions, and we're seeing that now with people receiving their goods and having getting the product in their hands. It's been great from that side.
So from my perspective, and probably more from a technical perspective, I think the way that the team have balanced the game and created this really deep, engaging crafting system that just gives you so many different options. It's one of those really compelling threads that pulls you through the game, and I think the guys have really nailed it this time.
What particular challenges exist in partnering with other studios to adapt IPs for the tabletop industry?
So there's a couple of challenges. So one is obviously at the development layer and making sure that the work that we do enhances the experience of the original IP. And that has a myriad of different challenges, but it really kind of boils down to making sure that what we do makes fans of that IP feel like it's another way of engaging with something that they care about deeply. And then the other layer is more on a B2B layer, is making sure that we have really good communication channels, making sure that we're a good partner for the people that we work with. And that works across and up and down the organisation chart, through synchronising marketing teams, working with them in terms of getting things signed off, getting hold of assets, stuff like that. I
think a lot of the time when we're working with a licensor, I think there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on to get that, like Matt said about the communication channels and connections. What would normally be a timeline of something we create ourselves on an internal IP, you have to expand those timelines and really anticipate and build in that support networks, because you work with arrangers, there's plenty of demands on them, and being respectful of that time. So I think we've done this for quite a few years now. 9 years we're coming up to, and we've really honed our practice and skills at doing that over the time. And it's something that takes time to do, and isn't always easy to do that. Thankfully we've got some great partners now that we work with on multiple projects, and we've got a really good, strong working relationship across those.
What about, we talked about the challenges, I'm also thinking of the advantage. The most visible one to me is, especially when you pull from an existing IP, you have an established community, an established group of fans that can come with you. If it's from video games or if it's from some other market, you can pull them with you to the board game based off of their appreciation for the existing lore, the existing world, and they may join into like a new media for that same content. What other advantages maybe more subtle are there that you think of whenever you're adapting an IP?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to underestimate how much pure effort as well as talent goes into world building and building a coherent world, a coherent art style, look, feel, verisimilitude, all these kinds of things that layer in. Now, obviously, we have experience of doing that with games like Guild Ball and God Tier and Bardsong. But when you're working with someone, they've already done this and they have a team of incredibly talented people working on that aspect as well. So in many ways, that's one of the, a huge advantage for us, because it means we can kind of really dive into the actual detail of the mechanics without necessarily having to worry too much about the amount of effort that goes into building a coherent world. It
takes that off your plate so that you can focus even more and drill down into the game design.
I mean, it's not necessarily like a 100% saving, because there's still always a translation exercise that needs to happen. It's like what works on a video game, also we need to make sure does that work on a tabletop space, and it doesn't always. But yeah, it's a colossal portion of the effort required.
Iceborne will function as a standalone expansion with its own slew of content to be revealed as the Kickstarter launches. In a game where biomes are a part of the core experience, I'm thinking about, you have the Wildspire Waste, the Kusa, I don't know how to say that one, Ancient Forest. We'll just move on after I butchered the first one. What aspects of Iceborne made it more prudent to present it as its own game?
So there's a couple of factors at play here. So one is something that we need to think about quite carefully when it comes to considering how people are going to be able to get hold of this product. And one of the most typical ways is you go into your FLGS and you look at all the cool games that have come out or that are on the shelves, and you get to make your selection. For an FLGS to carry a product, a core game or a standalone game significantly is easier for them to sell, and that's important for us to create products that are easy for our retail partners to be able to sell. So rather than making this an expansion, which therefore it's much more difficult for them to stock and sell, making it standalone is a really easy decision to go down. And then when we look at the actual amount of content that's available within Iceborne, as I think we sort of said last night in the keynote, that this is actually coming with more monsters than Monster Hunter World. So this is as big as, if not slightly bigger than Monster Hunter World. Well, at that point, it kind of carries its own heft. It can carry its own weight now, and it should really be its own game. And really, one of the things that I'm keen to do is make sure that people who love Monster Hunter World really have a reason to look at Monster Hunter Iceborne and be excited about it, because it creates that different experience. It's still a game that you love. It still has that really smooth flow, the stamina management concept, the crafting, everything that you really expect and what you've seen and loved within Monster Hunter World. But if we can take that and create an experience that feels different, it becomes its own thing. So you dovetail those two things together, and suddenly the argument for making Iceborne a different, a new experience is really compelling.
Definitely, I think when you fast forward a year and a half up, after the Monster Hunter Iceborne campaign, and that would be arriving, our fan base at that stage would have had all that time to play the current world game, right? And I think it'd be, that arriving then is going to give a really nice kind of, new, fresh feel, to what they've been playing for a long time.
I do think that that's probably something that Kickstarter backers, including myself, don't always factor in when you're thinking about something. Monster Hunter World has just now delivered, and even if the campaign's right about the launch, then you have the presence of mind. You're like, well, how is this relating to this? But really, it's going to be
a long time,
18 months, before it comes. So you do have a plenty of time to actually enjoy and dig into the content before you ever would have a new wave of it come in.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a logistics as well. Unlike a video game that has the ability, especially I'm kind of old school video game developer where patching was really not necessarily, it was a big deal to patch, whereas now super easy to do a digital update for a product. It's almost impossible to do that without huge expense to update a product that's already been out. So there is a degree of once we've made a game, it is the game, and it's incredibly difficult for us to update that. But we know, because we want to do it ourselves, because we're fans of tabletop games and this particular IP, that people are going to want to mix and match, and absolutely, because the game is built on the same sort of chassis, the same framework, the maths is all the same. It's entirely possible for you at your table to absolutely choose where you're going to explore around and which biomes you're going to go to and how you want to explore your way through the campaign. But it's almost impossible for us to retrospectively support that. So again, another really strong tick in the box why it makes so much sense for this to be, a standalone different game experience.
What is your favorite part of the original game, and in what way do you think Iceborne builds on the foundation you've shared with the community?
What I really like about the original Monster Hunter world is we've managed to build a very deep and quite complex set of monster behaviours that are actually fairly swift, considering how much complexity is in there. They're actually really swift to kind of resolve at the table. And so when you play the heroes, we should be the stars of the show. So I don't really want the AI to be so complicated it takes a majority of the game time. The spotlight should always be on a player and not always on a monster. However cool they are and however important they are as a centerpiece, they need to sort of share the spotlight. So I love that. What I love even more about Iceborne is we've been able to double it. Right, so now we've got two. So we've still got that slickness, and you've played this game a few times now. It still doesn't intrude. It still doesn't overstay its welcome. It still actually adds to the cinema of the experience, and you've still got this really slick AI system of these two monsters moving around now. And yet, as a player, you still feel like you're important. You are important, and I think that's been masterfully done. Like that balance of getting that right has really hit the sweet spot.
I think, the turf war mechanics is just a really nice addition to...
You're just copying my answer.
A little bit, I got an extra bit. I think it's the vectors of decision point, when you're actually playing the game, the change. I need like that one.
Yeah, I like it. It's very good.
But yeah, like the vector decision point, because you go from that one-on-one, dealing with the issue, to just bringing in that extra party, and it just really changes the framework of how you consider that fight and what you're going into. I think the other one to note is just little things as well we've done over time. Like obviously these ones have now the sculpted bases, which from a visual point of view is a really nice little addition that we've done, and I think it just brings the models up a little extra notch, and I think the team's done a great job of just noticing those little bits that sometimes you don't always instantly notice.
Good.
If you were introducing Iceborne to players who have no experience with Monster Hunter World, how would you describe
Big monsters,
the
hit
experience?
them with a sword till they're dead.
All right,
Steal their stuff.
That's good.
Make better stuff. That's it.
We'll go with that one.
Nothing more needs to be said.
Elevator pitch.
Stupid question.
Yeah.
What types of obstacles do you encounter when trying to bring a game of this size through production and fulfillment?
So I think originally when we looked at the original, it was we hadn't really ever tackled a game that had so many big models in, and there's obviously consideration when the consumer looks at this, the customer look and they goes like, oh, that's only 4 models. I can actually getting the idea of how the size, the complexity of these models, and it's easier to do when you've got the physical thing in front of you to go, wow, you see the board set up. And I think that was one of the challenges we've had is like, if you look at, obviously world behind us, it's a lot of boxes, right? And we've really had to think about how they're packed in, the vac form trays, how we can kind of mitigate, and move things like the wings and the connection points. And the team have done a great job on World of exploring that. And again, all the knowledge and learnings we've done from that will apply into, this product and future products we do to just keep as much as we can, making sure we're making tight, consistent, well-packed products that keep the costs, relatively controlled. As we all know at the moment, production costs have increased in China. It's been a big whirlwind to the industry of how that's raised over the last few years. But I think people will be pleasantly surprised when they see what we've done with Iceborne and how we've tried to keep that controlled and offer sensible pledges and packages that meet that as well. I think again, jumping into what Matt said about standalone expansions, that's another way, like we've done with the standalone format, that really helps with controlling that as well, because the differences between what an expansion can sell and a standalone product, you can sell a lot more of the standalone, which helps when we're looking at margins and looking at success as well.
How do you work to find a balance in story, setting, and gameplay while also adhering to the world that so many gamers love?
I think, that's probably a full podcast in and of itself. But
Let's get started.
yeah, right. I'm going to need more tea. I think one of the things that I really like is creating systems that allow emergent story events to happen, which then really makes the game experience for each table, each group, each time you play it, quite personal. And I think one of the things that does is that then enables it's a little bit of a trick, which is it enables you to kind of like paint your memories, paint your experiences onto what you've just experienced. So if you play a lot of Monster Hunter, you've seen these fights dozens of times. You've seen these creatures kind of in the flesh, as it were, but in vivid kind of Technicolor, and they're on your huge flat screen at home. So that's in your memory bank somewhere. So if we can create events that feel like they make sense in that world, you're overlaying them with your mental imagery that you've conjured in your mind. It's almost like the Alfred Hitchcock kind of theory of horror, isn't it? Or, in psychology is what's not there is more scary because you're actually feeling it here than anything he could write down or put on the screen. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of something that always inspires me when it comes to sort of talking with the team and we look at the discrete systems we're trying to do and trying to find that balance. And to answer your question more directly, what that actually does is that enables the table to almost define the balance of where they want to spend their attention. So if you're sitting around a table with people who are a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more narrative driven, the mechanics and everything like that almost sort of fades into like the sort of sideline a little bit. It's still there, it's what enables it to go on, but you're really punctuating in with the events that are happening, and you're talking about the stories, and when a massive blow goes down and you're seeing that. But for those other tables that maybe are a bit more skewed towards the tactical challenge, the strategic layout, working together as a team, trying to understand the mechanics, what's the monster going to do next, or maybe the story then just fades into the background for that group. Mm-hmm. The game's still the same game, and that's one of the things I love about the challenge of designing experiences through these kind of modular parts that then allow a table to define how they want to interact with those kind of key parts. Do you get that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're no matter what the personal balance is of the players that they're bringing from their perspective, you want your systems to be so natural that they can kind of fade away. You have that like suspension of disbelief from the participant, and then they can choose how to dial that in because it's so smooth that it's more of like a natural process to them rather than artificial and I think, bouncing between them.
But for those people who really want that technical heft, they can really put all their attention onto this. Card management, managing the stamina bar, how does that all work? I think the reason why I'm quite strong in my feelings about that is I'm fully aware that I have personal biases. I know what I like in games, and I've been on the planet long enough to realise that not everyone likes the same things I do. So how I like interacting with games is different from how other people do, but it's important for us to make games that allow you to interact with them how you want to. It's not a one size fits all. It's more a game, a set of game systems that allow you to kind of engage with it how you want to.
We've talked about this being an existing IP. We know that this comes from a very successful line of video games. What I'm curious about is not necessarily for maybe the typical viewer, the typical consumer that's in the board game space, but for the existing fans, the video game community. How do you try to communicate the board game experience to those people?
So the thing with the board game version of a video game is it's one of the very first things that we have to consider is why are you going to play this and not that, right? And I'm stealing that from you or Alex, but it's such a fundamental question because you spend $500 on a PS5 and $60, $70, $80 on a game. Well, that's quite an investment. So why are you going to play this and not play on the video game? And I think one of the things that I always look for, because I think the magic of board games and tabletop gaming in general is that you really get the most out of it when you're playing around the table with other people in real life at the same time, without digital devices, in my personal preference. You're tactilely feeling real physical objects. you're actually in the world rather than kind of locked into something 6 inches from your nose. If that is true, and I believe it to be true, how we communicate this to people who love Monster Hunter is, and what Monster Hunter is a really good example, is because it is a team game. It is something that you log on, you group up, and you take on these creatures with other people. And yet, most of the time, you're doing it as a singular experience where you're sitting in your lounge and you might have a headset on and you're chatting to people. One of the reasons why this is such a compelling offer is you're actually doing the teamwork, you're taking on the monsters, but now you're having a human-to-human interaction. And that, I think, once you start experiencing, that's why we all get really hooked on playing board games. I think, we just like hanging out with people and doing this stuff. So if you play a lot of video games and you have that kind of enjoyment of these worlds and of the complex game systems and the behaviours that exist in the video game, but you also really like the idea of hanging out with your mates in real life, maybe having a drink, maybe having a cup of tea or whatever you'd like to do, but having a real world experience, I think that's the thing that I would really latch onto when looking to talk to people about why you should look at this.
I think as well, we shouldn't just assume, if we are doing, we shouldn't assume that the video game crowd would need a simple version or some, board games that need to be simple for people that aren't board gamers. I think games like this are perfectly applicable to people, taking through that journey and that. And I think there's definitely, we've seen the likes of other products, in the marketplace that are now going much more bigger and mainstream, and as board gaming and tabletop in general gets lifted. And I think it's good to have products like this that do kind of appeal to people just from the pure IP side, and then expose them into this world via these kind of games, and they aren't kind of dumbed down or simplified.
It's a really important point, that, isn't it? It's people who haven't played tabletop games aren't dumb. They're not stupid. You don't need to make a simple version, but what you do need to do is make the accessibility more easy, but without sacrificing the depth or the complexity. So each of the discrete systems that happen in this game are perfectly understandable by anyone if you just explain them to them, right? But it's how they work together and it's how they mix together, and it's then the decisions you make. So for people who are maybe like Rich and I, a bit more kind of competitive miniatures gaming as a background, there is technical crunch in here that we particularly enjoy and really kind of drill into. But if that's not something that you've experienced yet, or something that you want to go towards, then you can interact with the same system, but maybe not see some of the complexities or necessarily have to. Do you know what I mean?
I think that goes back to your point on striking that balance between the story and the setting and the gameplay.
Right.
That it's even more compelling for people that are coming to it for the first time, even from the video game background. If you have each of those dialed in so well, they can go, if someone really likes the setting and the gathering phase and all that stuff more in the video game, they can also pull from that experience in the tabletop version as well.
I think the more entry points we have into the industry in general, and if our the IPs work on allows that, the better. Simple as that.
What is one memorable story from the design and development of Iceborne?
I think one of the memorable stories for me, which is quite personal, is we like a lot of companies now, we work in a hybrid way. We have a distributed team, so we really look forward to those times where we organise coming together to work together. So as important as it is, in my opinion, to play a game together, it's also hugely important, therefore, to come together and work in the same place on these products. So we have a mechanism we call a design week, which ostensibly is an excuse for all of us to kind of congregate in one place. We hang out for generally a week, hence the week bit of it, and we do some design bit, like the clues in the
like
name,
the design
right?
bit?
It makes more sense when I explain it.
This is straightforward.
Right?
You're going somewhere brilliant.
But well, thank you, sir. But what's cool about it, and like I say, on a more personal and slightly sort of slushy way, is it's a chance to kind of connect with people who I enjoy spending time with, I enjoy working with. But because of the way the world is, I tend to only get to talk to them through a Zoom chat now. So we find, and I cherish this, is that when we come together, we work hard, we get in at 9, we smash all the way through, and there's many times you kind of go, it's probably time to go to bed yet, and it's like, have we gone through that much? or other times we'll finish like 5-6 o'clock and then we'll crack out another game. We'll just start playing some games and hanging out and order some burgers in or whatever. So for me, the design weeks are the things that will always stay in my memory for every game we make, and Iceborne absolutely is we've had some really good fun weeks.
I think for me it was when the proofs arrived of the final miniatures as well for World, and that was great to see, and then we saw the work that was doing on Iceborne, and it was like seeing the first samples come through, our test print and stuff like that, and they're just seeing these models that you play
How
in the
big
video
was that
game.
test print?
You
did
it's
big.
pretty big.
Not big enough is the answer. Not big enough.
So yeah, it's really cool to see that, because I know that our team does incredible jobs, from every aspect of what we do, but particularly the way they managed to translate these monsters into the PVC, in production, that is just incredible.
And I think just the way, look, our schedules, like everyone's, have been affected by COVID, and things haven't quite lined up how we originally planned. The happy accident is it's been, Monster Hunter time in kind of like SFG Towers, where we've got World kind of coming in and going out to people, our backers, and then obviously going out to retail while we're talking about that and Iceborne. So yeah, there's just been this kind of like doubling up of it's Monster Hunter time, and it's great.
Now that we've kind of explored maybe a little bit of a conversation behind the scenes with Iceborne, if you were to describe the most thrilling aspect of the new content that's coming out, what would each of you pick?
Turf Wars.
You're going to go Turf Wars?
Yeah. I love that mechanic.
I might go with a new idea for a mechanic that I've had that I'm going to tell Jamie about. Where is he?
I'd love to hear this.
I don't know.
Jamie's now panicking. He's like, no, it's
no,
locked.
I can't say it
Everything's
out
locked.
loud.
We're all there. This is, yeah.
No, I couldn't. I might. No, I think Rich is right. Turf Wars is great. I think again, apologies for being a little bit more kind of like techie and a little bit more impressed by some of the more subtle things, but I really like the tactical, crunchy nature of Monster Hunter World. I really like the slightly kind of like streamlined, sped up feeling that you get from Iceborne. I love the fact that it creates a contrast in feeling for the games that I really enjoy both. So I think that's actually been nicely done by the team. The way they've managed to make it feel same and yet different, and I'm really impressed by that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to chat, and I'm looking forward to seeing this out in the world and maybe doing some Turf Wars and maybe ideas that you have in
we should
addition.
just
chat
brainstorm.
sidebar on that.
Yeah,
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. No phones.
No phones.
Obviously.
So I appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you to Steamforged Games for giving us the opportunity to host this and have this conversation, and I hope I'll see you guys next time. Bye.